It's just coming up on 1 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. I think we might have a few stragglers join us. But anyway, thanks for joining us today. I'm Sarah Miller. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications at the Small Business Association of Michigan. And I'm really pleased to introduce today's guest speaker, Sue Justice. Sue is an SBAM VIP member, so thanks, Sue, for your membership and support. But she's the founder, president, and human resource business partner for Emery HR, which is a certified woman-owned small business. Sue has over 20 years of extensive experience in the field of human resources, mainly in consulting and management roles. And she has experience in designing and servicing employee benefit programs. She is a SHRM Senior Certified Professional, has a Bachelor of Business Management from Northwood University, and is a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. So, Sue, thanks for joining us today. A couple of quick housekeeping items. One, today's webinar is being recorded, and we will send out the copy of the recording to you along with the slides either later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And feel free to drop questions, comments, and anything else you might have to share in the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar. So with that, Sue, welcome. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. Okay, well, our class for today is increasing retention and attraction through an exceptional employee experience. So just to give an idea of what I want to cover over today is, of course, defining what an exceptional employee experience means, why it's important, what is the employee life cycle. So I go over the life cycle because this is the way I design a program. And I think it's the most efficient way of being able to design a program. We'll go through the overview of the entire employee life cycle and how you can develop an experience in each level. Technology, how you can use it to help you, metrics, and then we do a summary at the end. So what is the exceptional employee experience? Well, obviously it's to make your employees feel exceptional. It's more of a feeling, I think, than anything else, but it's everything that we have to do to make it that way and make it consistent for the employee. So again, and it starts from the beginning and the inception. So from the first time that you have contact with that candidate, actually. So it starts at attraction, not necessarily even recruiting, but we do want to look at that piece of it. So why is it important? I think all of us in small business are really feeling the issues as far as in the tightness of getting top talent. Sometimes it's really just getting a warm body. It can be challenging. So this is even a bigger deal because I think that even the younger generations coming into the workforce, they're looking for this. This is very important how their employers make them feel. So it's not necessarily looking at money. There are obviously employees that are motivated by money, but they're also looking for other things and to help them improve their life. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But as far as understand also the other piece that drives the exceptional employee experience is building your culture. Of course, that's that feeling that people get is through your culture. So we got a lot to go through. This is really just to give you a preliminary outline, I guess, of what it is. And we'll get some, hopefully get some good stuff for you to be able to take with you and apply to your businesses. So what's the life cycle? So it's beginning from inception to end. So the very beginning is the attraction. Okay, so they're really not even born yet, so to speak. So what's attracting people to your business? Then, of course, we're looking for them, recruiting them. So this is your first contact with them. They're either applying online or you're reaching out to them for a pre-screening, interviews, things like that. And so every contact you have with them, they're judging your business. Then we have orientation. We hire them. Then we bring them in orientation, onboarding. Then that middle piece of their life with you is, engagement and retention, performance management, learning and growth, giving them recognition, and then obviously helping them integrate their work life. And of course, last time part is helping them separate gracefully. So the first part, attraction. So this starts with the employer brand, and I'm going to bounce to my next one. It's got a lot of stuff on it, but this is, again, your employer brand and your employee value proposition. So this gives you, everybody here's their culture and their marketing plan, and this is your values and mission statements and things like that of who your company is and what does that mean. Everything stems from that employee branding. So everything that we talk about today somehow needs to be supportive of that brand so that there's consistency there. The second one is your employees. So we want consistency. Who do we want as, what's our top employee? Let's mimic that. What do our top employees look like? Who do we want working for our organization that fits our culture? And then, of course, always more importantly today, too, is having some form of community involvement. You know, having that social responsibility adds, again, another level to employees attracted to your company. And then I'm going to add another piece is once you have that, you want to advertise it, not only in your recruiting software and things like that, but on everything that you're marketing. This is who we are. And everything, again, that you're touching as an employer is a reflection on you. Uh-oh. There we go. So recruiting. The goal with a process. So each one of these are a separate process of we're pulling together to bring to create a unified system that you have so that it also builds consistency. So each person of your team is starting to, you know, depending on their job, they're able to go back and say, this is what we do. So under the recruiting part, so we want to have a seamless candidate experience. So we're going to start bringing them through that life cycle, and we want to make it smooth. We want to make it consistent. So the big thing here is we're going to see is processes. One second, I'm moving that out of my way. So as our team is building, so depending on who's your recruiter. So I don't know what size your company is, but look into saying, okay, who are our who's going to champion this each area? Usually HR will, guide the entire process, but they're not necessarily the ones that are actually doing all of the work. Of course, this is a team effort. We have to have senior management on board with this because, of course, they're making a lot of decisions, and they're the ones that really affect that employer brand. So we streamline the process. So, what tools do we want to use? Do we use Indeed? Do we use ZipRecruiters? Do we have a applicant tracking system? And all of those too have the ability for you to put your employer brand in there. So again, giving you a system that, again, promotes your business. Again, and it gives you some follow-ups and things like that that you can put in there. So when you're recruiting, one of the things that you really want to make clear is your job responsibilities. Have a job description for every single position in your company. This is where it all starts. This starts the consistent communication from one employee to the next, and it also eliminates misunderstandings. So when you're going through pre-screening and interviews with the employee, everything stems from that job description. And you want to update them periodically as well. However, that is your tool, I guess, your go-to. So each one of these pieces that I'm going to talk to is going to allow you to create that system. So you're recruiting people, you're training them, you're training who's your recruiter. So it's not just the person that's doing the pre-screening and things like that. You also then want to have training for your managers, how to interview. Again, so there's consistency and what that process looks like. And sometimes it's different for each position in your jobs, in your company. So thinking of that as well. Okay, so who do we have in those interviews? Who do we want? What do we want to know about that employee? And what else do we want to include in that to help us find the best candidate? Do we want to do some form of testing? Do we need to do background checks? What all do we need to do, again, to find the people that will fill our culture? And again, every little step of this, we want to make it human. We want to bring them in. We want them to feel comfortable. I'm going to check. Okay. And then, of course, part of it is to keep in mind that we want to keep everybody included. I know that I'm using some buzzwords here, but, if we're treating everybody like they belong into our organization, we're going to take care of that. Okay, and like Sarah said, I will take questions throughout. So if there's something that you want to clarify, feel free to put something in the chat, and we'll address it as we go along. I definitely want this something that you can bring back with you. Oops. Okay, next one. So once we hire somebody, so we go through the recruiting process, and in between there, so we decide that we want to hire somebody. I strongly recommend job offers. Now, granted, with your hourly employees, it might be different because the structure sometimes is different. But in those circumstances, especially with salaried employees, definitely do a job offer. That outlines now what you're offering them when they come in to work with you. And it is something that as HR, we do fall back on many times, because as you go along and the employee starts questioning what exactly was promised them. And sometimes we forget as well. So do a job offer. Again, it helps anything that helps that interaction and brings down the details of what's happening. The more the employee feels that they are going to be working with an organization that has this really well planned out. So from that, we want to create a plan and a schedule. So usually I always suggest sending welcome packets and the necessary information from the start date. Like I said, that this is building the relationship. So we're going from, courting the employee into, maybe we're getting engaged here. We're getting engaged. So the more that you can give them to prepare them for day one, the better. And a lot of this is that paperwork, so that the first day they're not just sitting at their desk or wherever, at a table somewhere finishing paperwork. Sometimes it happens, but preferably as much as we can get that taken care of, the better. Also, for that first day, be sure that you have some form of a structure. Again, helps that person feels welcome. Helps them feel more comfortable, understanding that they can be very nervous on their first day. And again, make it unique to that individual and their position. Okay, that's a big screen there. So orientation. So this is day one. I understand there are some companies that tend to be larger. They have a lot of hourly employees that they do this in groups, and sometimes it can be more than one day. That's where orientation and onboarding might mesh a little bit. But orientation is different than onboarding. We'll go a little bit more into that, but orientation is really the welcoming piece of for the employee. This is really just bringing them in, giving them the overview of the companies the first day, so that they have a warm feeling of what they're walking into, I suppose. So again, this is extremely important. The first 30 days of an employee's employment are crucial. So you want to get them engaged before they even start. So orientation, again, find a warm welcome, make sure somebody's there to greet them, whether it's HR, whether it's their manager, somebody that is there to greet them and bring them to whatever the next step is. So you have a schedule. Maybe give them an overview of your business and your culture, and then bring them on to what I suggest anyway. Bring them to your, if you can involve the direct manager, that's always good, because that's going to be their first line of answers, questions, things like that. And when they do the life of their employment there. if you can't do that, of course, a team member is really good, or like I said, it could be HR. Give them a tour of the company. So bring them around, help them feel, this is overall. So we're doing a big overview at this point, and then we're going to pare it down to more of a lower, a more individual level. So we do the orientation, like I said, that's paperwork, that's bringing them into the organization, things like that. Onboarding starts really soon after that. However, onboarding is a much longer process than 2-3 days or what have you. It really goes up to 6 months is what I put into that. You're still acclimating that employee into your business. So the piece of onboarding that we want to look at is, again, creating some processes and lists, again, for that consistency. So what does your onboarding look like? Usually I recommend a buddy, assign them a mentor or buddy. So probably somebody on their team or another team that's doing their position that can shadow them, or they shadow them, to, again, if they have questions, they're actually doing their job, but they have somebody right there. They don't have to figure out whether or not they have a question. They don't have to track down somebody with a question. They're getting that information right then and there. Introduce them to all the team members. So again, this is a one-on-one, this is your team, this is who they are. If you can do maybe a team lunch or something like that, that's awesome too, but not necessarily mandatory. The other piece is to schedule time with the other departments. So have them spend time with IT, have them spend time with HR. And again, how long that is just really depends on your company and what you feel comfortable with. So because they need to know what HR does. When do I go to HR? When do I go to my manager? What does HR do? IT, well, what do they do? I have a computer. When do I call IT? When do I not? Who's even in IT? And what do the other departments do? So again, giving them a well-rounded picture of the company, and again, integrating them and acclimating them fairly quickly. Creating a job training plan. So that goes a little bit with the buddy system, but again, most of us have some form of a manual. If you don't, this might be, job number one, of what that entails, of what training involves. What do they need to know? What do they need to know first to do their job and do it well? So the other thing, we're supporting the employee to make sure they feel comfortable within this process, and we're humanizing it. Another piece that's really good to do is to establish them a routine. So give them an idea of what a day should look like. Granted, a lot of times that's not actually what ends up happening, but especially in the first week, 2 weeks, 30 days, they're still trying to get their footing. They're still trying to get acclimated. So sometimes they just don't know what to do. So having that buddy helps, but also saying, okay, maybe you have your buddy for this amount of time. For this amount of time, you're on the phone. For this amount of time, you're doing X. So again, when they come in, and if nobody's right there, they can jump right in and feel productive. Because most people do actually, they realize they're on their job and that's what they want to do. They want to be productive. And the sooner, again, that we start them on that, the better they are. Because remember, every single day, especially when they're new, they're judging you as an employer. And I already talked about implementing a mindful plan. So, okay, what happens? They're here for 30 days. Make sure you have a formal review with their manager, sit down, give them feedback, have them questions or what have you. Granted, I think this should be happening almost every day. There should be a comfortable conversation between employees and their managers. But we still want to have a mindful 30-day discussion, mindful 60 days, 90 days. Then I say 6 months, and then we go into performance reviews and things like that. And this is my part saying the first 30 days. So this is just a survey results from Bamboo HR. And you'll see that why this is all of my points really go back to these. No, they don't know who to go to for questions. They don't have enough training. They don't feel well equipped to do their job. they don't have the tools, technology, maybe no training on that. I don't know. I remember years ago going to work for um, for employers, and I didn't even have a computer. So my first week was sitting at a desk with nothing, and hopefully I could just shadow somebody else and sit back and watch them. It's somewhat deflating because employees excited, they want to start working for you, and when they come in and there's no response, it makes them feel devalued. So this brings them way into engagement. And like I said, engagements from recruiting all the way through. So again, looking at some strategies in order to keep them engaged. And I have a few other screens that will help you do that. So it's not just team building, but team building is huge. Again, it's helping everybody work together. And when I say team building, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you all go off site and do some form of obstacle course or, what have you. But there are things that you can do to bring them together, whether it's just, Monday morning meetings or Friday morning meetings, having department or company lunches, depending on how big your small business is and how the structure is, but developing things like that the employees have time to get to know each other. For many people, that is extremely important to them. Celebrate your employees. So when you're developing and creating this design, this exceptional employee experience, be sure to put in there times and places and opportunities to celebrate your employees. We all get busy and we think we do a good job, but sometimes we do not because we're really busy. So, and finding ways to keep it consistent as well, because sometimes, we see one person, we work with one person all the time, or we pass them all the time. So they tend to get more kudos than maybe the other person that's on the other side of the building or works midnight shift. We don't get to see them. So we want to be able to be sure that we have a system that we are celebrating those milestones. And, it could be anniversaries, it can be training, graduation, certifications, employee, awards, some companies have like an award system, you buy some technology and you can put that in place as well. Okay, so stemming from that job description, so I said that job description is very important because this is where we break out what the employee's expectations are. And again, this should be communicated to them in their onboarding process because we want to make sure that we are, every time we're talking to them, how is this going? How is that going? And have that training structure broken out for them. So when you do sit down with them at 30 days, and again, these are the mindful ones that we're actually somehow recording or documenting these interactions. We want to set clear expectations from that job description. And then, of course, if there's anything else that, not everything's in that job description, but other things that we might need to know as the processes within their department and how to do their jobs. Tie their performance evaluations with career opportunities and rewards. I do not recommend that you actually tie performance management or performance reviews with a salary increase. Many things make it more complicated than having those two connected. We really want the performance review to be looked at as a performance and not necessarily the awards could be different, I guess. We want to use that performance to establish goals, communicate with the employee, what makes them happy, what doesn't, where do they want to go, help them understand of the advancement possibilities in your company. And if they do find that they have a career plan, how do you get them to that next promotion or that next position, or, it could be lateral. Again, having those set up, and I do say at least annually when you have the performance review with their manager, we look back at last year's goals and we plan sooner. But again, I'm going to go back. 1 year is not often enough to be reviewing their goals. But again, the main thing is that it's integrated into their daily work days. And the other reason why I don't necessarily like them to pay increases, because as small businesses and businesses in general, we are not always giving increases every year, and we're not always giving increases across the board. So that I would leave that to another time, because it's really important to be sure that you keep to at least an annual performance review. Everybody gets really, really busy, and these tend to fall by the wayside. And it's really important when you're talking to an employee about goals, getting feedback, and to respond to them. If you did not, it is almost worse than not doing it at all. And then the last thing is also, with the goals, we want to make sure that they're held accountable as well. Okay. So again, a lot of this is we're bringing employees, into the fold. We want them to feel that they are part of the company, and that they're making, helping make the company successful. Oops. With performance reviews and performance management, it's really good we really want the managers to have a comfort level with being able to do them. And there usually is a huge gap. Without the training, I do see a big gap between managers' way that they handle the performance reviews. So that I hear sometimes from an employee that they have this manager and they get an awesome review. Oh, it's great, flying colors, beautiful. The same employee or equivalent performance employee, they're with a different manager, totally different. It's a little bit more critical, because the manager views what the goal of that performance review is. So training is very important. And also sometimes there's managers that aren't in the position and they're not really managers. That goes into a whole nother section of making sure that we have the right butts in the seats. But again, this is high level. Each one of the areas that I'm going into, you can dive in deeper. And if we have time at the end, definitely we can do that. So also I want to put in the management area is to get the employees' feedback. And it may not be that you're just sitting down with them once a year. The manager's sitting down with them once a year. It's also, periodic surveys. How are things going? Some employees may not be upfront with it, or you just, again, depending on how your business is structured, they may be working multiple shifts. The manager might not see them all the time. They may be remote. So you're not seeing that employee every day, walking down the aisle or walking through the plant or, at the restaurant. So this can learning and development is another thing. And this is huge. I'm going to back up. So what I said in the very beginning is that we are feeling a talent crunch, not even just great talent, but just talent in general. And we're going to continue to feel that and see that. I don't know. I know I did see Brian Calley has, I sat through one of his seminars or conferences that he was going through just in Michigan, how our talent's going to look now and in the future. And it's not necessarily looking good. We have a lot of people retiring our talent pool, and we don't have the bodies necessarily to replace them. And if we do have them, there's a skills gap. And so this learning development stage is huge. And so this is another thing that it will really take you time to put together. What skills, doing a skills gap analysis for each position that you have. And from that, developing programs, whether it's online training, whether it is sending for certifications, coaching, mentorship, doing that buddy system all the way through, a the employee's life, with that in that position, who can mentor them throughout their time there. And again, also encouraging the employees to think that way, to have and develop and create a culture of learning. If it is something in your organization that you really want people to continue to learn, you want them to advance, add that to your culture. We are a learning company. We value learning, however large, little, size it may be. And this kind of is training and education is a level of learning and development. So you have learning and development, and how do you do that? And I touched on a couple of these, by doing a skills gap analysis, you have a feeling, you get an idea of who is in your current talent pool. What are they good at? What aren't they? And how do you fill in those gaps? So, when you're recruiting, you kind of get an idea that there's going to be some, you might have some positions that are harder to fill than others. And why is that? When you're recruiting, what is the talent out there? And what do we need to do to bring them up to speed and be a successful employee in that position? That's what helps you do the skills gap. So it could be that now you have to hire some really green employees that may not have everything that you need. That's that job description again. So you can, when you're interviewing, you're finding what that employee can do and what they cannot do. I'm going to put a little side note in there. Also, when you're interviewing and you're doing training for interviewing, be very clear to have your questions set up. Resumes, I've always thought this anyway, but resumes, AI is really big to help people create resumes. And it takes a good eye to look at a resume and say it was AI. So when you're sitting in an interview, have a conversation with that person, you'll find out what they can and cannot do on that resume. By having that conversation, then you can help them set up that training program once they come, you onboard them and you bring them into the company. So again, you're already setting the onboarding up to support employees to come into your organizations, even if they are not as qualified as you would like them to be. I also have clients that their point of view is not necessarily looking for the most qualified. They're really looking for a personality, characteristics that fit their culture. So again, having this process put together helps you navigate that more smoothly, help your employees feel engaged, valued. So again, and then different ways that you can set up your training. So there's online training. I'm not huge on that, but there are some things that, are okay to do in online training. Depending on how it's set up, I don't know. When I'm really busy, I'm just hitting, the proceed button, okay, that's great, proceed. So I really encourage employers, if they can, have it in some form of a live atmosphere. And again, from there, have goals from the employees so that they know what they should be getting out of that. So they're going into learning, what do you really want them to focus on? What's the goal of that training? I touched on a little bit on the career growth and advancement. So obviously, the best way of growing your talent pool is promoting from within. So by understanding what an employee wants and is looking for from their job, from their employer, helps you find ways and groom them into other places in your company. But that conversation has to happen, and a plan really helps. So there's all these little pieces that we might already be doing in our organizations. What we're doing here by developing a program with the employee life cycle is making consistency. We're putting in the details. We're making sure that there is more consistency. That is the big thing that gets lost in our daily life. So when we are more mindful and focused on what we want to do, it definitely goes smoother. Communication is clearer. And again, we are all more productive. And I think I missed a place. I want to go back up here as I'm talking about, helping our current employees do what they like to do. I am a big supporter of employees are better doing what they do best. They are happier, they are more productive, they have less mistakes. Understanding in this world that there's always going to be something in their job they're not going to like, but if you can find and position them where they really like and they can grow, it really helps, obviously, you as an employer benefit from that. So cross training, give them a feel for it. It may sound great to them, and they, cross train with somebody else, and they, may be able to fill in, but they may realize that that's not necessarily the next job they're going to have with you. And job rotation is another thing. I have a client that does that. Again, it just helps them from getting too bored. From especially if some of their jobs tend to be a little bit more mundane and maybe clerical or what have you, by shaking it up a little bit and learning new things can be helpful. Okay, so the next piece of this is the work-life integration. So I call it work-life integration rather than work-life balance. And and this is where it comes back to the devil's in the details, and really how you look at something is how it is developed. So work-life engagement, and I do find this is a bigger thing for smaller, for the new generations coming in. They are looking for, again, that feeling. They want to be part of a company. They want to integrate their work with their personal lives and vice versa. They don't necessarily want to say, okay, work is this, and then I'm going to go home and I'm not going to work at home. And so we have work and we have my personal lives, and we want to somehow balance them. They actually want it to be someplace is together, that there's a togetherness and a integration for that. So some of the things that you can look at, obviously a lot of this depends on the job position, how your organization is structured, and of course your industry. So are there ways that you can create flexible work arrangements? And even hourly employees, you can make some adjustments to help them work and integrate and work around their family life as well, or their personal lives. We don't want work necessarily to be an impediment, at least when we're focusing on growing an exceptional employee experience. So this is where our focus is that we want the employees, we're really focusing on the employee, and how can we best make them happy in our position, because if they're happy, they're productive. So what can you do with flexible work assignments? Again, going back to, are they hourly? Are they salaried? Are they remote? Do they do shift work? Do they come into an office? How can you be flexible in making those arrangements? And I'm going to digress a little bit of, when you're looking at flexible work arrangements, this can also help you in recruiting. When we are looking for, say, a position that's really hard to fill, and we find some fantastic people, but they're not wanting to work full-time, and it's actually a full-time position. Well, maybe you can make that position, hire 2 part-timers, or a 3/4 and a third. Being flexible in what that job looks like and how you can structure that position, that department, and accommodating things like that. Again, you're working with the employee and you're getting your work done. What needs to be done is getting done. Encourage use of PTO. People, more than not, do not use all of their PTO. Okay, obviously you have the people that will use it up, and they're at Christmas time wanting to take their time, the rest of the time They either bank it and they want to use it all at one time, or they've used it before, and they ran out before the year ended. And maybe there's some time management skills there. However, we really want our employees refreshed. We don't want them stressed out. We want them to spend time with their families. We want them to uh, have some time to themselves, to recuperate, what have you. So it is a good thing to want them to take time off. And when I'm saying is one of the things, I'm going to put a little side note here that might structure, you can do to structure that as far as policy goes, is you could put in your policy that you do not pay time out at the end of the year. So that way you're encouraging them to take it. Now, again, there's many philosophies behind that. So it's just a little note there, may or may not work in your company. Also, just another little note, focusing on paid time off. You'll hear more on benefit packages and how to, again, work with employees and offer maybe some benefits that don't cost a lot, but again, are more attractive to different groups of people. Unlimited paid time off is a big one. And research shows that the average employee takes 17 days a year of paid time off. Now, you might have holidays and things like that that are extra to that. But so again, encouraging them to take their PTO, having rules around there, how often, giving advance notice so you can plan and things like that. It really benefits you as an employer. Promote a healthy workplace. You don't necessarily, let me see, is it there? Okay, so we have employee wellness. So you don't necessarily have to have, yoga classes in the morning, but there are companies that do. It makes sense. But we really want to focus on the employees' well-being and their mental health. Again, it goes back to encouraging them to take PTO time, taking care of themselves, having, that time with their family, personal time, and being able to, I'm going to go separate the work and their family life. So helping them and giving them the tools to do that. We don't want to assume necessarily that all our employees know how to do this. So not that it's a requirement, but it is definitely an advantage as an employer to offer these things to their employees. And there are things that you can do that are not necessarily high costs. Again, it goes back to doing appreciation things, celebrate them. That's all positive. Giving them some resources as far as maybe an EAP program or some other things that might encourage them to do things that help them feel better and take care of themselves. So, mental health days, having that into, your PTO programming. So you might not have anything, an employee may not have a plan for PTO, but having that encouragement that sometimes you just need to take a day off. It is good. Some other things that I just lost the thought as far as employee wellness, and I'm going to go back. What I don't have in here, and I'm going to use it here because a lot of times employee wellness is integrated into benefit packages. It's part of your health insurance and things like that. And I don't necessarily cover it in here, but it is part of a compensation package that you will also want to look into. What can you give your employees that fit what your demographics of employees need to have and what fulfills what you need as an employer. So whether it is, a robust health insurance plan, if you have a younger workforce, health insurance might not be on their top of their list of what they're looking for. Maybe you have a 401k and retirement savings, pet insurance. There's a whole lot of voluntary products that you could put in also to, supplement those benefits that you're offering employees. And just by giving them the ability to purchase things like that is helpful. Then, of course, also putting in a salary strategy, for each level. So you do, again, have some consistency in each area of your business. And I am just flying through this. So the last piece of the employee cycle is the separation of employment. So, obviously there's many different types, or a few different types of how the employee leaves. Well, many different types, but most of them are voluntary and involuntary. So the picture here is he can be happy he's leaving, or, because he didn't have a good experience with you as an employee, and he's happy he's let go, or he was leaving for other reasons, whether it was for another job to pursue other interests, and you made him feel good leaving the job. So exit interviews are really big here, because again, you get feedback from the employee of what they liked and did not like. Now, again, depending on how the separation is happening and the purpose reasons, you might not have that opportunity. But again, when an employee is leaving, they are not necessarily afraid to share. You're going to get a lot more honest feedback than you may get from an active employee. The second piece of that is also cultivating and keeping that relationship, because many times the employee, again, saying that the employee is leaving to pursue some other interests, they may want to come back, especially if they're a really good employee. We want to be able to welcome them back. So again, maintaining that relationship, but then also they're our biggest cheerleaders. They're going out into the world and saying what it's like to work for you. So whether they're active, again, going through that life cycle at any point in time, they are your cheerleader. They are your person that's going out and describing what it's like to work for your organization. And we all feel that, whether we get a bad review on Indeed or a fabulous review on Indeed, it's because that person had some type of interaction with your company, with a person, with an employee, and that's how they made them feel. This process is to help those comments and things be a positive, not a negative. It happens, but again, what our goal is throughout this entire purpose of looking through the employee life cycle is to have a coherence through that cycle and attracting, finding, keeping talent. The other piece that, I have a lot of employers that look at, okay, when they're trying to separate for the various reasons. So sometimes when it's involuntary doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Maybe the position just went away. Maybe there's other reasons why you're letting that employee go. And you want to make sure that you want to still to be on good terms. So separation agreements. Now, again, a separation agreement can also be on the negative side, because what you're doing with the separation agreement is you're setting policies, you're setting up what you want, the form of the separation. What does it involve, and what are the criteria of the separation? And one of the big things, obviously, you're going over benefits if you're paying any of those out. What's their final pay? And another big one is they're signing off that they're not going to sue you. Because again, you're giving them something to get that. It doesn't always mean that that is a potential, but there are some employers that this is the thing that they do. When they're letting somebody go, they put in a separation agreement. There also are severance packages. In my brain, they're a little bit differently. Severance packages are a lot of times voluntary. They're retiring. They are moving on from your organization, but it's a really good split. It's not necessarily they lost the job went away or what have you. So similar, it's just that it doesn't necessarily have the same terms as a separation agreement. It's more of, okay, thank you so much for your time here, and this is what we want to send you off with. The alumni network, this is another place that can be a very good talent pool. And this comes back from, ex-employees, employees that worked for you and for whatever reason are no longer working with you. Well, they have friends, they have coworkers, they have classmates, and being able to nurture that network also can help you recruit individuals. Okay. I threw in here technology and AI. In every step of the process, this is can really help get rid of some of those mundane processes or tasks that take a lot of time and keep you from really focusing on the interaction with the employees. So by taking some of that away, AI and technology really makes things more efficient. So again, give you some more time. Make things that can make things better by innovation and giving ideas. But saving that time really is the most helpful. So kind of give some ideas here, recruiting. I'm going to use Indeed. If you ever hear me talk, I do really like Indeed. ZipRecruiter is very similar, and I'm sure there's many others out there that work very much the same. In our HR world, the recruiting piece has been using AI for a really long time. And I use Indeed just for the fact too that a lot of people have used it. But when you look at Indeed, and if you have the opportunity, if you're whether you're looking for employees or if you can hang out with HR and say, how does this look? You can get an idea of how Indeed is really capitalized on AI to create that experience. So, like I was saying, that they have a company site that you can use for branding. So you create the site, they have reviews, they have all the things that you can put your mission statement and mission, all of that in there. And then of course you're posting your jobs there. And when you're creating jobs, you want to make sure that they fit your environment. So you don't necessarily want to cut and paste your job description. Okay. So you put that in there because again, you want to put in that job post the things you are looking for. So what are the responsibilities? What are the qualifications? Because what Indeed will do is they take that information and they help you find candidates. And they take you through this process as you post the position, then it goes through your benefits. So what's your compensation look like? Next, well, how do you want to screen them? So maybe there's some pre-screening questions you want to put in there. Again, automating some of that process in the screening of people. They have some interviewing skill sets tests that you can take, and maybe you want to put some on outside of Indeed. But again, using one platform in order to do this process and track this process and keep you on board with it. You can schedule, video interviewing. You can just schedule the interview. You can chat with them. But again, it brings you all the way through that system of, it helps you checkbox each one of those areas so that you have a checklist, you have a process. And then since the technology is bringing you all the way through that, now, whether it's your HR, your manager, when they're dealing with that person, you're interacting with them. So when you go through their pre-screening, a person actually picks up the phone, does a video screen or something like that that has now an interaction with the employee. They're not just talking to Indeed. We're still now inserting ourselves and bringing that process along. But what we're getting now is we're getting more data so that when we are talking to potential employees, we're having more in-depth, more meaningful conversations with them. Onboarding. So moving them to onboarding, like we went over before, is payroll companies have a lot that you can send them an invite. They can fill out all that paperwork before day one. So we're getting rid of all of that minutia, things that we have to do to get them up and running as an employee. And I put in there, payroll providers have this. Obviously, there's a lot of technology out there. Creating a checklist and just some of the things that you need to look at to find a technology that works and provides you for what you are needing. There are a ton of them out there. But I send you over to your payroll provider because that's the easiest. You already have them. And for some of them, it's already integrated into your payroll. And again, it helps them, move that process along. Performance review, again, tons of technology out there. Some of the payroll providers have them. They may not work the way you want them to. Again, gauging on what you as a company you want to invest in, whether you want to invest in new technology or use what you have. Usually, at least in my world with our clients, we're usually using whatever they have, and we at all possible structure it using the technology they already have and getting the most out of it. Team collaborations, this can go in many areas, but I think it's become big with just multi-location companies, remote workers, separate shifts, to bring organizations together on site and to be able to communicate the same information. But it's no longer verbal. Obviously we got Zoom and through the pandemic, so many of us just had to figure it out, right? So now what the organizations got used to using it. So now how can we use it to our benefit? How can we meet more as a team efficiently? And there's so many tools in, whether it's Teams, whether it's Zoom, there's probably other out there. Those are the two main ones that I have experience I use that can help you have those team meetings and still dispense, I guess, the information that you're needing. So, they have whiteboards, they have, like this, you can share screens, your videotaping, everybody, different ways that you can still illustrate what you are needing to share. And this is also really easy for when you need to impromptu meetings, and you're having scheduling issues, that sometimes it is easier to do some form of a Zoom call. But again, there's other technologies as far as, if you're looking for ideas, going back to looking for team building, what would fit into your department. So if you're HR, maybe you are tasked, or you're a manager of your department and you're tasked to put something together to unify and help your team get to know each other. Great for ideas. There's a lot of AI out there as far as platforms that you can use. I think the chat PGT was the big one, open AI, but now you have Copilot, you have Claude, you have Gemini, and various levels of those, whether or not you want to purchase a program or not, depending on how much your organization is going to use it. This is an entire separate topic, but when you are using those tools, understand what you're using them for, the pros and cons, and make sure your employees know this. So have an AI policy. So again, use it as a tool, not a replacement for human interaction. Be aware that, again, a lot of your AI tools are just really going through big data. There's all this data out there, and they're pulling it all in together to give you an answer on whatever specific question you have or whatever you're trying to achieve. So some of that data might be wrong. Some of that data might be prejudiced. Be careful what you're putting out there, because remember, we all know that once you put it out there, you don't get it back. So understanding that it's going out in the big data. So, somebody else might be searching for something, and your client's personal data gets pulled into it. But again, huge place to save time. And then, of course, you can use it to track the metrics. which is the next thing. So you're doing all this. How do you know it works? So you're working on putting this plan together, and you have a plan, and you have a policy, and you have procedures, and you're training everyone. Is it working? So some key areas of how you can assess that they're working. Areas that will help you the most, obviously, to know that it's happening is your productivity. All this comes down to, what does your company do? What are the positions? So clarify that too. What do we want to get out of it, and what can we measure? Quality. Again, what can we measure? What can we improve? Efficiency, customer satisfaction is a big place, innovation, and revenue. So again, all these are little target areas that you can put in a little bit more quantitative metrics. Of course, there's going to be subjective, especially if you're in the services business world. It can be a lot more subjective and qualitative. Evaluate your employees. So, we have the outside metrics that, of all of the our atmosphere, our environment, clients, things like that, that we assess, but also internally, how are your employees feeling? What do they think? So doing, surveys and things like that for them is very helpful. Other metrics that you can put in there, safety incidents, absenteeism, tardyism, turnover and retention. Those are big ones that, and also performance reviews. So again, when you're setting up that performance review, putting away a tracking system is very helpful. And I already went through surveys and feedback. So again, we have that, and then I am jumping in for questions.
Thank you so much, Sue. I did let people know they could put their questions in the chat. It was very thorough. We haven't had any questions yet, but I will invite people to ask those questions now if they have any, or you can feel free to reach out to Sue directly. She has her email address right there. Sue, that was so enlightening, and I love how you tied everything together to really talk about this as a full package. So thank you so much for your time today. I am not seeing any questions coming in. So again, to those of you who joined us, thank you so much. I'll be sending out Sue's slides and the recording for your reference. And we will hope to see you on another SBAM webinar soon. Again, Sue, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.